Okay, we will bring the council workshop for October 17th, 2023 to order. This is a compensation study presentation from Mark Goldberg with David Drown and Associates.
Thank you, Mayor Ryan. Can I tee up the workshop for just a
Please.
moment? Perfect. So we have Mark Goldberg here with us on Zoom. We'll slide him onto the screen here in a minute. So he is here to help us with kind of orienting the council and staff with our 2024 compensation study. We have 2 agenda items tonight, so I'm hoping that we can spend about 45 minutes on each and have a good discussion. I want to allow time for Amber with the Parks Master Plan conversation as well. But for our first item, Mark is going to share with the city. He has a proposal that he provided to us that was in your packet that incorporates a handful of different components that we can choose as part of the study for 2024. So he will go through their approach to the compensation study to give us a kind of a feel for what they do and how they work through their process. We can certainly ask questions and make sure we understand the options available to us. Following tonight, what I'm hopeful we'll do is we'll give staff time to process the information, ask some questions, and have some conversation around what the study will look like. So we have some good clarity and get some feedback from staff on what maybe they would like to see as outcomes from the study. Then in November, we would bring a recommendation to the council for which components specifically we'd like to include. There's anything from just doing a market analysis, I think, to a full job description analysis, classification. So there's a lot of different components to it. So I think it's what would bring the most value to the city and help us kind of move forward in some of our strategic plan efforts with respect to employee retention and satisfaction. So that's just a high level overview. The presentation is also in your packet, but we'll have Mark run through it and then we will just follow up with any questions you might have. So with that, Mark, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you so much for having me here. As Jenny said, my name is Mark Goldberg, here representing DDA. I got to tell you, I hate hearing myself drone on, so please feel free to ask questions at any point. The goal is really to be collaborative with you guys. I'm going to share my screen here. Oops, actually, Jenny, could you allow me to share my screen?
Yes, we should be able to do that.
If not, I can just go through the presentation so you guys have hard copies anyway.
You should be a host
There we go.
now. Okay.
Yeah. Can you see the presentation up there?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, perfect.
Wonderful. Okay. So just want to go through real fast who DDA is, kind of what our background is, and then what do we want to do with it? And then talk a little bit about communication, because that's a critical part that many places don't talk about. So DDA has been doing this for a long time, over 25 years. A lot of that time was spent on the financial side of things. And then about 8 years ago, our clients started coming to us and saying, hey, can you help us with HR related issues? We started doing executive recruitment. And then my partner, Dr. Tessa Melvin, started the classification and compensation group. I joined about 3 years ago. Actually, it'll be 3 years ago next month. And before that, I'll get to my background in a second, but I wanted to hit a little bit about what we want to do with this. As I mentioned, we don't look at class and comp like, oh, you do this and you don't talk to us again for 5 years, 10 years, something like that. We're working with our clients regularly, and that helps us gain increased familiarity with your jobs and allows us to do the work better for you when we, constantly kind of working with you around class and comp issues. We do have the ongoing maintenance program, which I'll talk about maybe a little bit at the end, but even if you don't do that, most of our clients stick with us and say, hey, even if you're not doing ongoing maintenance, Mark, can you take a look at our job and evaluate this job? Can you get us some market information for this particular position we're having trouble recruiting for, et cetera? But my background is actually 27 years of experience in class and comp. Before joining DDA 3 years ago, I was with Arthur J. Gallagher, helping to lead their public sector group. Before that, I was with the University of Minnesota for a couple of years as a comp leader there. And before that, with the Metropolitan Council as a comp manager there for about 5 years. So about a little over half of my time spent just specifically in the public sector. And then we have a bunch of other people. As I mentioned, Dr. Tessa Melvin's my partner on this. Kelly Jones would be the main other person you'd be working with. Kelly works with me to get a lot of the market information and do the analysis side of things. So the thing that separates DDA is we understand this stuff. As I said, I've been a comp manager in the public sector and higher ed, so I know what goes on. I understand this stuff. We're not just consultants who've never done this. We've all been part of this, and so we understand it, and we customize it. What I do for Nisswa would not be the same as what I do for Mankato, which would be different than what I do for Maple Grove and different from Warroad. So, nothing is cookie cutter. Everything is a little bit different for every one of my clients. And one of the other things is we don't nickel and dime. It's here's what you got. As Jenny mentioned, there's a number of different options. And you could say, oh, we just want to do the market study at the start. Okay, that's fine. And then later, could you do some of these other things? Yeah, sure, no problem. But we're not going to say, well, we're only going to do this for this many jobs or for this many positions. No, we'll work with you and make sure that you get what you need, basically. Now, with that, this would be kind of the full study, more or less. And you may not want to do this, but just want to kind of lay everything out first. So first, we talk with the project team. And usually those are members of the leadership within the city. Sometimes there's both a project and a design team, with the design team being the leaders of the organization, a smaller team, they're the ones that are going to be the decision makers, and a project team being kind of a larger group, usually with some line employees involved, so that there's a greater sense of buy-in. Then we do the market analysis. I'll get into that a little bit more. We evaluate the job descriptions using, well, we have a couple of different ways we can do it. We have two that we've developed in-house, or if you want to stick with what you have currently, we're trained in basically every evaluation system on earth. Then go through an appeals process in terms of where the jobs are placed, calibrate the pay structure, meaning, what does this look like? When you line things up internally, where people come out, when you compare them from one department to another, does everything make sense kind of holistically throughout the city? And then align that with the market. So we give you a structure that is internally equitable and externally competitive. And then show you, hey, here's what the costing would be for this stuff. This year, if you want us to do next year and a couple of years out, we do that as well. But first, we got to talk with you and figure out, let's lay out a project schedule. When do you want to meet? How do you want to communicate? What do you want to communicate? What are some issues that we might not be aware of right at the start that you can kind of let us know? If you do want us to do employee sessions and you talk with employees, we can absolutely do that. And start talking about what do you want to use to evaluate your jobs. Again, we have two systems that we've developed in-house, but there's lots of other ways we can approach it. And then we start evaluating things. Again, this is assuming the full study. You may not want to do that. You may just want to do market study, which is fine. And we'll get to what that looks like in a second. But we have to go through and get updated job descriptions or position analysis questionnaires. If your job descriptions haven't been updated in the last couple of years, it's probably not a bad idea to get updated information. We have two ways of doing that. There is a long form, which is a full position analysis questionnaire, which I think I've sent to Jenny. But there's also a short form. So let's say you've got a maintenance person whose job may have just changed a little bit here and there. Maybe a duty or so has changed, or something's changed slightly in a certification or experience. You can just fill out the short form, this position review form. And that takes a lot less time than filling out that whole position analysis questionnaire. But we need the updated information so that we know what we're comparing against. We know how we're evaluating the jobs and using the most updated information. With the comp study, what we're going to do is identify the labor market. And what does that mean? If you have a list of 10, 15 comparable cities, we can certainly use that and go off that. If you want us to help develop it, no problem. I'll put together a list. What I like doing though is making sure that that list is a little bit broader maybe than one you've done in the past. The reason for that is we're seeing places, people willing to go further and further for their jobs. So geographic proximity has to be considered, but it shouldn't be the only consideration. You should look at who's providing some similar services to you across the state, similar to you in population size, places you might be losing people to or recruiting people from. These are all considerations you need to have kind of in your mind when you're thinking about, who do you want to get the market data from? And what we can do is, for whatever reason, let's say you wanted to pull the city of St. Paul. Okay, well, you want to keep an eye on it, but you don't want to include it in the overall analysis. We can put it in a spotlight section. So we'll gather the data, again, from St. Paul, let's say, but we're not going to include it in the overall averages. We're going to put it in a little bit in an area below it so that you can still look and see, oh, okay, here's what St. Paul is paying for a social worker or for a cop or something like that, but it's not affecting the overall data. And we're going to go through all that data and make sure that it makes sense. So if we see things that are really low or really high, we're going to remove that. So here's an example. Let's say we've got 10 matches for an accountant position, and 8 of them are between 45 and 55,000, and one of them's at 25,000, one of them's at 95,000. We're going to remove those two that are 25,000 and 95,000, put them in the section below. But Jenny might say, Mark, I know that's 95,000, but we need to have it in there for whatever reason. Okay, fine. I just drag it in there. It takes 2 seconds. But you're going to see all the data, and we're going to be partners in reviewing all this. We're going to go through and do the deep dive. You don't have to go through all the data if you don't want to, but you'll have the ability to take a look and see, here are all the matches that were made for these jobs. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to put everything together. How we evaluate the jobs, kind of what the points are, or what's the grades that have come out at, how does that line up with where the market is, and that this is where the council comes in and says, we want to be at market. We're okay a little bit above, a little bit below, and that can change. About 3 months ago, I was working with the city, and they had said they wanted to be at market. Data came back. They were 17% below on the minimums, 19% on the maximums. They said, we don't want to be at market. I said, okay, tell me where you want to be. Let's kind of look and see kind of where you're going to come out at. Where do you want to be? And then, here's how you can do it going forward. Here's how you can plan for that. So don't ever think that any of this stuff is set in stone, because it's never set until we kind of finalize it. We'll probably be working through it maybe right up until we finalize everything. And then I will come back and do a final report to the council in person. I'm going to be quiet for a second before I get into communication. Any questions at this point?
I just had one question. Do
Please.
you do this type of work nationally, or just for the state, or what's your area of expertise?
DDA traditionally has only been in Minnesota.
Okay.
But I had a number of my clients follow me from Gallagher. So now we are working a little bit more nationally. We're not trying to, but I've had clients from Colorado and Florida and Illinois and a couple of other states where they just wanted to keep working with me. So mostly it's Minnesota, but we are having some clients outside of Minnesota right now.
And how long have you been doing this?
Me personally?
For
27.
Minnesota, doing this type of studies?
As a company, we've been doing this for 8 years. Class and comp within DDA started about 8 years ago, but I've got 27 years of experience doing this.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay.
No,
Well,
not at this time.
Okay, thank you. With communication, it is so important. Making sure that the council is up to speed on where things are. Not that you need to be involved in all the details, but have a general understanding of what's going on with it. Making sure the department heads know what's going on. talking with employees, talking with the labor attorney once it comes to negotiation time, and giving the unions a heads up on things. It very much is, here are the different places that you need to make sure you're talking with people and getting people up to speed on things. Now, there's a number of different ways to do this. If you have a communications person within the city, making sure they're looped in with stuff. If you do want to do a project kickoff meeting, if that's something that's of interest, absolutely do it and then record it so that people can always refer to it later, because you're never going to get everyone to those meetings. I like branding projects because I think it makes it a little bit more fun. I was talking with actually the city of Redwood Falls this afternoon. We're starting a project with them, and they were thinking about calling theirs CAPE, classification, analysis, position, equity. And I was like, okay, that would be fun. Then you can have some fun images with kind of CAPE, but just calling it the Class and Comp project is boring and no one will listen. Call it something more fun. Okay, that people might pay a little bit more attention. Olmsted County is calling theirs SOAR. I forget what SOAR stands for exactly, but been able to do some nice branding around it. And setting up a website, if you do have an internal kind of internal web, putting a link on there so that employees can refer to this later. I have FAQs that I can provide to you. Any presentations we provide can be put there. Position analysis questionnaires can be put there. It's just a nice one-stop shop for people if they have questions once the project is kicked off. I mentioned a little bit about post-implementation, some stuff that can happen. We can do all of this, communications and the appeals process. That's all part of it. But the ongoing maintenance, I mentioned briefly, it's something a lot of our clients really like doing, because what it does is it just takes the burden off of you for Class and Comp. We do either with third or a quarter, however you want to do it, of your jobs. Each year, we'd update the job descriptions, classify them, do the market analysis, do your pay equity work, do payroll implementation. So it really just kind of offloads all of the Class and Comp stuff from you onto us, and then we just kind of keep it up for you. That would be it from a presentation standpoint. I don't know if you want to talk at all about the proposal and some of the different modular aspects of it. You tell me what you guys want to hear about.
Mayor Ryan, thank you. I didn't mention at the beginning, but a component of this that I think is important, that I have engaged the Employee Retention Committee regarding this project, because I think they would be a good group to work through the conversations, because they do have a cross-section of employees from different departments as part of that committee. So I have engaged the group. They're aware of tonight's presentation and can obviously go back to look at the recording for those who aren't here. And I think that would be a good way to funnel staff feedback through the process and help to do that. So as much or as little as they want to be involved, we'll work through that and bring more details to the council in November as well. Are there any questions as far as Mark mentioned, there are 4 options, and he spoke to each of them briefly. Any questions about the specifics or?
Yeah, I just was wondering about, they have 4 options.
Mhm.
And then option 4 is ongoing maintenance. It's like $5,800 annually. Does that mean that you need to go with options 1 through 3 to get option 4?
Nope.
Or can you just do 1 and 2 and get 4, or what?
Yeah, ongoing maintenance is something that you can always choose later. Many of my clients will have us do a market study or a full Class and Comp study, and then we're working with them and helping them over the course of the year. And then the next year, they'll engage us for the ongoing maintenance, just to make sure it gets kept up. But you could choose, we just want to do the market study right now, and maybe we'll look at ongoing maintenance later. Great, that's not a problem. we're really easy to work with and flexible on what you want and how, whatever you need.
What, when you say market analysis, what's that include?
So with the market analysis, what we do is we would work with you to get the here's what you want to use for labor market, and pull all that information for as many positions as we can. Normally we get between 70 and 90% of the positions. I've never hit 100% in all my years. But hey, you guys could be the first. As a point of comparison, when I was with Gallagher, if we got 40% of the jobs, we were like super happy. But we normally hit 70 to 90% of the jobs for the city. And we would show you, here's where I was going to pull up something and actually show it to you, but probably shouldn't, because it would be protected information. But show you, here's where you guys are right now. Here's where the market is for it. And here's where you guys are above or below the market. So you might have some positions that are 5 or 10% above and others that are 5 or 10% below. Anything that's over 10% high or low, we usually color code. And here's where the city is on the aggregate. So for all the positions, you're coming in at 2% below or 8% above or whatever it looks like. And then I'm sorry.
When you look at that, does that take into account, wages, benefits, everything, or is
It is not benefits. We can pull benefits information, but this is just base salary. I get asked about benefits an awful lot. And the truth is, we can certainly pull benefits information for you, but the truth is there's usually minimal differences within benefits. Where there's real variance is within kind of the nuances within, for example, a healthcare plan. Nisswa might contribute $400 a month for family medical, and the city of Mendota Heights might contribute $600. So, okay, well, they contribute a lot more than you, but your plan might have a lot lower deductibles or co-pays or things like that, which we're not going to be able to get into that level of detail. So we can get benefits information, but the truth is it's probably not going to be terribly useful for you.
Okay, thanks.
And we did, Mark and I have talked about that. So that's certainly something, a variable we should consider and decide if that's a value or not. So that can be something that staff could give feedback on as well.
What is your process for going about the job description writing? Because you stayed on option 3 with no job description writing. I'm curious to see how you value that in scale of price, and then how you would go about it with us.
So there's a number of different ways to write the job descriptions. I'd provide a couple of options, probably through Jenny on this. But hey, here's a number of different ways we could write it. As long as we have updated information, whether it's through existing job descriptions that you have or through a position analysis questionnaire. But once I have that information, then I would go through and write the job description in the format that you guys choose. The trend has been to be shorter job descriptions, 2, maybe 3 pages, usually keeping it to 2 pages or so, because the trend of really long detailed job descriptions is something that nobody likes to maintain. But that's kind of the general process behind it, is once we have that updated information, which we need for the classification and evaluation section, then it's just writing them.
Got it. Thank you.
And you mentioned in market analysis that you would come up with some pricing, like the salaried, and it's just for the salary side, whether we're above or below or something like that. So what's the difference with the market analysis and then market analysis with pay grid calibration? What's that?
Good question. So the market analysis is just, we get the market data and share it with you and show you, hey, here's where things are. We might make some general recommendations. Hey, you might want to adjust this structure or that structure, but we're not redoing things. When you're doing a market analysis and pay grid calibration, then we're redoing your structures for you. With market analysis and pay grade calibration, we're not evaluating the jobs, but we're saying, okay, you know, when we look at these positions, we're not changing what grades they're in, but we're going to be adjusting where they are compared to the market. Maybe your salary range is only 25% from minimum to maximum, and your competitors, your labor market is more like 32%. Okay, let's lengthen that out. Let's have that max go out a little bit further. But if Jenny's in grade 10, we're not going to be changing her from grade 10 to grade 9 or grade 11. She's going to stay where she is. But we would change the structure around so that it would align better with where you want to be compared to the market. And then the full class and comp study would be, we do the market study, we evaluate the jobs using whatever methodology, and then we redo the structure and do the pricing on it. But the market and pay calibration just doesn't do the classification piece. It just says, okay, here's the market study, redoing your structures, here's what the cost would be for that using the existing grades for every job. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Does staff have any questions for Mark? Okay.
Real fast before I forget, one of the things that also we do really, really well is that market data. We can usually turn that around 3 or 4 weeks because we have so many rosters from cities and counties across the state that we have the data, so we're able to get that for you a lot faster than other places. And we show you, here's what the market data is, here's who we matched against. So you are our partner in making sure that the data is it reflects what you need.
So if we just did option 1, you mentioned a couple of weeks type thing. What
3,
about
4
if you
weeks.
did all 3?
Well, if it's a full study, part of that's going to depend on getting the updated position information. So if you have updated job descriptions, then I can turn it around really quickly.
Yeah.
If you don't have updated job descriptions and you need to go through using a position analysis questionnaire and or a position review form, it's really kind of up to you guys how fast that goes. I can provide some general timeframes around it, but you know, it's going to depend kind of on the city on that piece. Once I get the updated position information, I can usually turn that around in 2 weeks or so and say, here's how I evaluated these jobs. Now, after that, we'll probably have discussions and say, okay, you know, I evaluated this job and put it here. Let's talk about it. Does this internal hierarchy make sense? Are there things that I'm missing or have over evaluated based on the job?
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't appear to be anything else.
I have no more questions.
Thank you, Mark, for your time today and your presentation. I think it was really helpful. If the council is amenable to the approach that we'll take over this next month to get feedback and a recommendation to you, then it will give us time before essentially January, where we would then ideally kick off the study, and whether or not we include position review and some of that job description piece, that would be something we could potentially start working on in December to help aid in the process in January, but we can work through that, and we will follow up with more information for the council in November, if that works. Great.
Okay, great.
Good.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Mark.
sir.
Mayor, council members, thank you so much. Have a good night.
Okay. Then it is Amber's turn. And we are looking at the park master plan.
I just have one clarification before we moved on in regards to staff's feedback on this. This is going to essentially be compiled before we get to a decision-making point. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yes,
Right.
that's
Got it.
the idea in my head. I'm hoping that makes sense and that works well to compile all the feedback, and hopefully there'll be some consensus about what options to choose or what thoughts. So
Which they're obviously keenly aware of the cost of all 3 options. So I think that good feedback will be encouraged, because obviously this is going to affect not us, you all, so. It's,
The options? It's in the packet. So,
well, you'll be able to check it over nonetheless, and then we can compile that feedback and it'd be good. Thank you.
All right, good evening. As Jenny mentioned, we are gonna be going over Nisswa City Park and the master plan. So I thought it'd be helpful for you guys as well as any public that might be listening tonight to go over a brief history of things that we've done to this point. In December of 2021, we completed a rink feasibility study. What spurred that is the aging infrastructure of the hockey rink. So that's kind of where we started everything, knowing that that's a pretty large project in and of itself. That's how we initiated the master planning process. Through that process, we went through several rounds of community engagement. Our first one was in July of 2022, where we had a community survey done. From those survey results, we created concept designs. We had an open house. We were at the fall festival as well as the golf tournament trying to elicit feedback from the community on those designs. From that feedback, we created a preferred design, which went into the master plan. That was also open for community input before the plan was adopted February of this year. Since then, we've had many discussions regarding marketing and what our next steps are and what does that look like. We decided to do 3D graphic renderings, which I will be showing you later on in this presentation. And then that brings us here to tonight. So we've been working on this park well over 2 years now and have had several rounds of community engagement. So what you're seeing through these renderings is the feedback we have received from the community, from the Parks Commission, staff recommendations. I pretty much will show them to anybody who will listen to me and try and get feedback on it. And so tonight, what I'm hoping for is to just reaffirm that this is our end goal. This is what we are working towards, and we're going to work back on the how to get there part. And so that's the second piece of it, trying to get some feedback, and that information is in your packet. So again, I said we had a community survey within the Parks Master Plan. We have the results of that. Paved trails and playgrounds are the most used amenities. And then standalone pickleball courts were the third most desired new addition. There's breakdowns of what the hockey rink desires are. And so really good feedback from the community survey, which brought us to the 3 concept designs. We intentionally made those concept designs different to elicit response. So we could hear what people liked, what they didn't like. We had 3 different events that we held, and they were able to interact online on a social pinpoint and submit their comments. And then the firm compiled all that information. And from that, we created the preferred concept design. So that was adopted in the master plan. We're trying to take the vision and make it a reality. So from that, we have begun graphic renderings. And so I'm going to kind of scroll through these, but definitely tell me to stop if you have questions on them. They're going to be very small up on the screen for you guys. But just kind of gives you an idea. The goal is to try and start bringing this to life, taking it from 2D to 3D, helping people feel what the space could be like. So I will just go through, but again, just tell me to stop and we can certainly zoom in and move it around and things like that.
Are those picnic tables or et cetera out in front of the community center?
Yes, that turns part of what is maybe more so of a loading area into a patio.
Got it.
So I refer to that one in your documents as a community center patio, and then the one that's in the middle of the screen is, I called that center plaza.
It's fascinating to see it 3D.
Again, we were recommending 6 pickleball courts and a tennis court. This brings us kind of towards the playground, looking at an inclusive design, more of a destination playground. It's an expanded footprint. It has both a 2 to 5-year-old playground with more ramps for some mobility, people with mobility challenges, things like that, as well as a 5 to 12-year-old playground. This one has an example of a zip line. One of them has a chair. You can see that right here, which is an inclusive feature as well. And then this is what I refer to as center plaza. So this will be outside the warming house, kind of creating the center of the park as the hub of the park. Bathrooms would be, again, this is concept design, but we'd put the bathrooms in the warming house, center of the park again. And then the plan maintains both a baseball field and a softball field. The idea would be to improve spectator seating as well as consider an announcer's booth, especially for things like the high school games, the Lightning games, things like that. It increases pedestrian circulation, so sidewalks into and around the park. And then that would be the softball field. And then a covered refrigerated ice rink, adding bleachers, players boxes, things of that nature. We do have youth and adult hockey games there. And so that would be reoriented from what it is now and repositioned within the park. And this would be an additional parking lot off of Church Street. So this concept increases the parking that's available. And then you can kind of see right here, this would be a skating rink. So it would be no boards and uncovered. Questions on any of these? Anyone you want me to go back to? So here today, we are going through our planning process. Today is our opportunity to build the tomorrow Nisswa wants. They've given us their feedback. We've adopted it in our master plan. Now we got to figure out how to get there. It's our chance to take the vision and make it the reality. So with that, we created some, we'll call them info sheets, and that's what you received in your packet. Tonight, I would like to focus primarily on priority, funding source, and timeline. The description, that's pretty self-explanatory. You can see all of that in the pictures. What the master plan system directives are, and then the costs were based on our best analysis that we worked on with HKGI during the planning process and factor in likely a little inflation, and kind of went with a 15% professional fee. So at this time, cost is our best guessing. So I want to keep the dialogue focused on which are our priorities, focusing on the funding sources. And then if you guys have any deviation on the timeline, almost all the timelines, I believe, are based on when we have full funding. So if there is something different you would like to see, happy to discuss it.
Amber, would you like us to put each sheet so we can go through it? Is
You want
that
to?
helpful? You stole your mouse.
I'll give it back.
Perfect. Figured then you can say, okay, we're at, pickleball, and then talk through it.
Good job.
Thank you. So yeah, just again, tonight, trying to reaffirm that is the direction, that is our end goal. All of it is compiled within these sheets in some fashion. We can also regroup if need to. if you guys see different projects working differently together. But we will just start with pickleball and tennis. Like I said, this is a high priority based on community feedback. We do have 3 courts. They are not designated solely for pickleball. They share space with basketball and hockey. And so the desire is to have designated courts. Based on it's a community desire, Jenny and I thought that grants and donations is likely the funding source for that one. It does fit very well into a grant that we've identified, the DNR's outdoor recreation grant. And so.
Dollar for dollar match.
Yeah. Yep.
And question I can't exactly recall, but what percentage of contingency did they factor into the cost of these projects? Wasn't it 10%?
We're trying to err on the
It's been a
side of
while.
caution here and kind of go a little higher, just knowing that the market has changed kind of drastically, supplies, contractors, all the nuances of it. And we don't have an exact timeline. If we're going when funds are raised, that could be next April. That could be 3 years down the road. And so it's kind of hard to gauge some of that. But with a 15% professional fee, it does have, some will probably be under, some will maybe be over. Not everything is going to take that full amount to.
So you got like quotes on this type thing or no? Just
No.
How did you get these numbers then?
Professional recommendation from the company that helped build the master plan. A little bit of, I flip through all my playground magazines and pick out what I like. And just different conversations with
Right.
salesmen, looking through magazines.
Okay.
And then HKGI is kind of professional analysis.
So these are pretty good faith guesses, and then you added on a little extra, like 15% professional or
Yep.
something. Yeah, okay.
Obviously, things like the rink and the warming house are much more technical than just making sure the foundation of the playground is set. So there's certainly wiggle room. Some might be over, some might be under.
Okay.
Any questions or thoughts on pickleball and tennis courts?
Do you see a lot of traffic over there in the summer? You do,
Yeah,
It's
pretty busy.
yeah. Some days you go there and people are waiting to play. Other days there might be there may be nobody there, but there are people there. I'll put it that way.
And just to reiterate a couple of comments that Amber made, the priority for pickleball and tennis is noted as high based on the community feedback. However, since we don't currently have dedicated pickleball and tennis courts, it would be a new addition. And so consideration for what the city needs to be setting aside in our capital improvement plan for the things we have currently versus a new amenity. That's why our recommendation for funding would be donations and grants, to say we need outside funding in order to get this project off the ground. But that's what we're looking for from council, is if you agree with the priority and the funding, or if you want us to consider any other avenues. So that's just how we're trying to walk through it, is to say, how can we focus our time for each component of this park, utilizing the funding streams we have available.
I know someone on the Parks and Rec committee is pretty sure that they would be able to get funding for pickleball, private donations. I think that's the way we should go with that. The question I do have though is can we piecemeal the engineering for the park, or does the engineering to figure out where things are going have to be done all at once?
Probably best to ask an engineer about that. In my opinion, I see on some level, we do need to analyze the whole park, because we don't want to get going so far down the path on one thing that we're not seeing how the dominoes are gonna fall 12 moves down the road. And so on some level, just making sure that we're taking the correct space for each element, and not gonna have to backtrack. I would recommend that versus just one by one by one. I think a little bit of a blanket analysis from an engineer would be good before getting going on too far down any path.
If we got enough donations or donations, can that be used for the matching grant as well? Or does the city?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the goal, is that the donations could be then put towards the grant, and then there wouldn't necessarily be an out-of-pocket cost for the city.
If that's the case, that's the best way to go through with that. Try to get as much donations as possible, if that's what we're hearing. And then get that matching grant to work it out. That would make it a win-win.
Okay, so we're pretty good with the plan for
Yeah.
pickleball tennis.
Mm.
Okay, moving on to an inclusive destination playground.
I think you're,
Oh, there's my.
Amber, just reviewing how you have everything prioritized, in my opinion, I think it's pretty good. The cost for the hockey rink is definitely peculiar due to its magnitude and cost. Skated that enough now? Yeah, I definitely know it's in bad shape. There's just these factors that have come up recently that, I mean, are all probably on top of our mind, and apologize for missing last meeting, but with the prospects of actually obtaining this parcel of land over there, we have to decide what we want to utilize with that part. And I know there's been discussions about the prospects of moving a park or developing a portion of that land for a park. Were there any discussions last meeting regarding that? No. Because ultimately what you need to know from us too is if there are thoughts that are harbored by any of us to do that, then this is all wasted effort. So I think that's the white elephant in the room that we should probably get out before we continue on wasting additional time on your end and then us as well.
On the hockey rink
Well, I mean,
or the whole thing.
well, it probably both, but seems more blanket than not. Growing up in this town, I've just become so accustomed to having this here and knowing that it's there and it's right next to we try to foster such a family environment in this town that I can't imagine I can't imagine the city park being out of the city. I personally can't. And it'll be a large transition for us, not just renovating what's there existing. If say hypothetically 5 years time, we did move this new park master plan to a parcel of that land down on Highway 371.
Yeah, and I'll say that because of how we acquired this land.
Yeah.
It has to remain as parkland, or we would have to go down the conversion process of purchasing new land, and that's when we were talking about the the recycling center. That's kind of some of those conversations where we have to go through the National Park Service and the DNR to get permission to convert the land from parkland. So just keeping that in mind, that would have to be a part of the process if we were to move this from being a park to something else and move the park somewhere. In terms of hockey specifically, I would maybe the scope of hockey would change, but I think we'd want to have further dialogue in the business plan of the arena and if it would even allow space for public or to what extent public use. And so I think just having those dialogues and nuances, does that mean we'd want the refrigeration in the roof? Maybe not. But in terms of would the public even have the time, the ice time is precious.
It is, and it's for the sake of break even cost for a facility like that. Why would we want public time on an arena like that? Just outside of an exceptional, okay, historically, we have an hour window where there's really nobody renting the ice out from any organization at a hypothetical arena. where you could just say, it's open skate night, bring the family, come on down.
Yeah.
But
So I'll say you might change the scope of what we would do here.
Right, right. If-
And also if we don't add a roof, we don't want to keep the rink running east and west. So
Yep.
we'd have to go back to a different model and switch it back to a north-south orientation because the sun affects the north side of the rink.
so, and I'll just skip input, that rink goes to hell. It's actually getting earlier and earlier and earlier. This year, I think we lost ice.
February 8th.
Come on, there's still 18 inches of ice on Gull Lake at that time or more. And I don't mean to derail your presentation. I hope you don't feel like I am, but it's definitely pertinent to this overall plan, especially if you're looking for guidance, so that we need to discuss these things because they are ultimately relevant. Especially when it comes to a dollar amount, specifically just for one large item such as the hockey rink and warming house.
I think that would, well, one, my opinion, park stays there because of everything going on, not moving down there. If the arena goes in there, I mean, that's the talks we have to have. And then if it is a yes, then we'd have to scale this one back.
Mhm.
Because then, because if that takes off, if it does take off, you're gonna have an attraction there. You're gonna have, a lot more play there, but this would be more for recreational, pond hockey and so forth.
Yeah, it's two different uses, really.
Right,
Without a
they are.
doubt, without a doubt, and
Yeah.
we're not gonna make money from. Me and the boys
No.
pickleball hockey league, it's just saying.
No,
It's fun, don't get me wrong, love to see it, but I don't want to see the taxpayers burden that. I don't think we're gonna get all donations for something to that extent. Maybe, I love to think so. My question is, on pertinent to the hockey and skating rinks, did you get a guesstimate of what the price would be for not having the,
Roof,
not the, keep retaining the.
oh,
the
refrigeration.
Is
yeah,
that
when
the
we did the
largest
rink
cost?
feasibility study, they gave us a few different options and they gave me an Excel document so I can manipulate things
Yep.
to the best of my abilities. They also kind of did a 3-year inflation part of it
Yep.
as well, so I can kind of manipulate those numbers. I believe the refrigeration alone at the time was either like 600 to 900,000.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
Yes.
had 800 in my head, so it's somewhere in that.
So refrigeration is significant. Having a roof does keep the sun from hitting it.
That's gonna be a
But-
big part.
That, which is a big piece of the puzzle.
But you could start taking away the bleachers, that kind of stuff.
And I mean, even when I was in high school, I can only recall one organized hockey game going on there through my entire high school tenure here. And it was one game, Little Falls, Brainerd versus Pequot, I think.
Yeah, most of the games that are taking place there are through our recreation programs.
Right. If the rest of you all would be curious to see it too, I guess my ask would be to see what what a projected cost would be if we were to say skinny it down a bit.
I believe when they first brought some of this information forward in replacing what we had, they put it at about 1.5 million.
Oh,
So I would venture.
but that does not include a new ZAM. Right?
No,
And that does not include a new warming house.
no,
Mm-mm.
and no garage. That is literally just replacing the slab, the boards, the lights, the nuts and
Yeah.
bolts of the operation there.
Does this 8.5 account for a new Zamboni? Yeah,
Mhm.
At the risk of being shot. If, for the pickleball courts, the tennis courts, the playground and ball fields, those are items that. They're not cheap, but it's not like the hockey rink.
Right.
And if we were to start with those, well, the hockey rink is the big, like you said, the white elephant. Because it takes up the space and everything and the orientation and all that.
Mhm.
But to me, getting the ball field, the inclusive park, playground and pickleball courts, the tennis court. Those are highly sought after items as well. And that would be where to start. And then later on, depending on what happens, looking at other areas or options.
I'll say, yeah, those other areas certainly have a much lower, more feasible price point
Yeah.
to obtain.
Yeah.
With the hockey rink and skating rink infrastructure, it is like 0 to 4 years at best. We are next week taking the skating rink boards down because they have reached the end of life. Refrigeration is inoperable. Hopefully the lights fire up. We don't know if we're gonna be able to get replacement lights. When I looked at retrofitting them in 2021, it was 25,000 per rink.
Oh,
So, yeah, see if it were me, I would do the rink first, but without. Do the rink first without a roof at first. And then put that in there, but depending on the orientation of the rink will depend on. What possibly will happen with an arena.
what are the other uses intended for the warming house in the off season?
Um,
In mind, I guess.
if you were gonna take what was on the concept designs, that's roughly
Kiki, could you pull that 3D?
it's roughly a 5,000 square foot facility.
Oh,
And so one of the thoughts was you could have a smaller room that I could potentially run some programming out of. Maybe it's the fitness classes that I run out of the community center, maybe,
kids'
you know,
birthday parties.
yeah, birthday parties for skate parties, things like
You
that.
go to the
You got the aerial?
yeah, 3D.
Would there be any sort of gymnasium space in that area?
Mm-mm.
Like,
No,
the
the
cross
plan,
link?
the plan was to put basketball hoops in the rink in the summertime. There'd be a small potentially programming area, whether it's kids' birthdays or just small park and rec programs. In the warming house, and then it'd be maintenance garages. So we need to take into account that even one of the garages out in the park right now has some public works stuff in it, and making sure that we have space for all that as well.
Are the trees there part of the property as well? To the very right,
These are non-existent. There's like one strip, because then this would be residential.
okay, I was just
there.
wondering if we went ahead, did the rink first and made it north-south where the trees are and going that way, north and south. And then later on, put the roof on.
Yeah, this is, the property line's like right here.
Oh, okay, so it wouldn't work.
It doesn't
Um,
fit without
we-
encroaching in the softball field, right? Isn't that one of the
Hold on,
designs?
where's my? Oh,
I would,
So this is a concept design
Yeah.
that kept it in the same footprint.
Okay,
And with this new, but with the 3D rendering you just had though, that excludes the prospects for having a skating rink.
It'd be more like a pond,
Upon,
where it's grass in the summer.
Yep.
And then flooded in the winter. So we don't totally, cover the entire park in concrete. And so, yes, it would, the concept here has kind of like a little loop where there's a tree in the middle, but no boards.
what,
Joe, what are your thoughts?
well, I mean, basically, we're talking about just under $9 million used December, January, and February,
right.
depending upon the weather. So 3 out of 12 months a year, it's a big price to do. I guess I'd be interested in redesigning it or looking at it a little bit. You know, if we have the pickleball courts, you're not playing pickleball in the winter. Can the pickleball courts go in that area in the summertime and not have both spaces? Cause it's opposite seasons, you know, have covered indoor pickleball courts in the summer. Like in the hockey rink area. I don't know what the math or the size is on that, or if something like that could be done. You know,
Well, I think we talked
That's
about
a
like
possibility.
flea market events or something to that effect going on in there Didn't we have-
Events, you have
in the
concerts.
summertime.
Brainerd has, I believe, 5 that fit in their hockey rink at Memorial Park.
Oh.
It was very consistent feedback that they want designated pickleball courts. So that would be a deviation from what the feedback was that we received. Not to say it's not done. We have 2 in our current rink right now. A roof would keep the water off. The hockey rink holds the water. And a lot of times you can't squeegee it off enough. So the roof is kind of a critical component of the ability to
Yeah, I
play
guess,
on a hockey rink.
you know,
Concrete's not very forgiving to your joints either.
I guess just in general, spending that much money for 3 months use of work without more thought into a plan throughout the year, seems like an awful lot of money to ask to do that one component. The rest of it, yeah, it's fine. It's, you know, nothing alarming, pretty standard, but seems like a big price tag for 3 months.
Well, it would be
It'd be a year-round usage. Not just
would
3
we do
months.
With it?
What's that?
But what's the practicality, you know? How does it bring people in there in the summertime? You know,
Well, one,
also too, in a warming house, summertime. Not against hockey players, but generally it stinks. It's not a conducive area to mix hockey and other things. There's lots of times a smell component to warming houses, just throwing that out there.
no, we didn't have a warming house when I was younger playing there.
Right, I'm just, you know, so if it's like, yeah, we're gonna have a warming house and then use it as a reception hall too, that might not be too conducive things.
For me, it's just sort of thinking that the pickleball courts, the tennis courts, the playground, ball fields, and forget hockey.
I don't think you need to forget it. It's just
No,
a
we
matter
don't
of
need to
what.
forget it. We just need
Wait
to-
on it.
If you
Right.
leave that area open, you could potentially still have a flooded area that you could
Correct.
have a rink and stuff like that until you decide whether or not you want to do the hockey rink there. The other discussion that was had for the last year or so was that for example, when the Pickle Factory has their concerts, or they have if it's gonna be
Yeah.
bad weather, you could do it under there. You could do other events and try and get other events in there, like a flea market
Yeah, there's
or even perhaps the
farmer's
farmer's market, you know, something like that. You know, those were all things that were discussed. At Bain Park, across from where I grew up in Brainerd, the warming house became the facilities for the summer of the park. So when you're in there, then you use the bathroom in there, the men's room, the ladies' room, that kind of stuff. In fact, Brainerd High School used to play their hockey games at Bain Park outside, so for the longest time. So, you know, but yeah, I mean, depending on how you build it and how you maintain it. You know, if it was just it was a locker room, but I don't think we're talking a locker room, we're talking warming house, right? Basically.
Yeah, what we have right now are a couple of players' benches and mats on the ground.
And is that a sidewalk going to the pickle?
Yeah, well, City Hall's parking lot.
That's awesome.
So in the
freeze
sake of
that.
time, we have maybe, 20 minutes
Yeah.
left here. I'm hearing a lot of hesitancy to even bring this to the public until we have further dialogue.
Well, I think that, and if I may, I think that there is, again, a whole nother wrench into this plan that none of us ever could have imagined or accounted for, and that's with Stuart Mills listing that property. That's with the prospects of us knowing that there's gonna be dollars being expended to that. That's gonna be in direct correlation to this levy. Where it's gonna be additional management to be able to coordinate that, which we don't want to stop current plans. I mean, we don't want that to happen. But I think this cost and seeing the 3D rendering of it brings to perspective a little bit that it may not be necessary to go to this degree. And that's even coming from me, and I use that a lot. However, it's very interesting learning being refreshed of the $1.5 million cost to just flat out redo the current rink in its current position. And to also get cost estimates perhaps for renovating the warming house and to perhaps renovate the Zamboni garage. And to make large public pushes, campaigns, so to speak, to get a Zamboni that's lightly used. I just don't know if there's gonna be enough traffic for me to want to justify saying, yeah, let's go make the 8.5 expenditure on it, regardless of the donations that we get in. And I mean, you look at the board outside of the warming house right now. I mean, Andersons were very generous. That was a long time ago. And I'm confident that we could garner a decent amount of money to be able to get this to come to reality, but there's just more layers to this now that has come up. That's not your fault. It's not really any of our faults, but I don't know if I'm comfortable making a decision or at least a recommendation of where to move forward tonight in light of these things until we have some of these wheels in further motion where we're in higher gear where we can then say, okay, I think we're all in consensus with some of the other items outside of the high dollar cost rink, but
Well, we also have the fact, like she said, that if it's not going to be a park, which is not what we're saying, but if it's not going to be a park, then we got to buy it or replace the land somewhere else.
And that can be up to, what was it, a 2+ year process?
Yeah.
And
Well-
that doesn't really sound very promising either.
so we all kind of need to come to
Well, I mean, to sum it up though, I think that we're probably all in agreement that it's gonna stay a park, right?
It's got to stay.
Okay. And we're all in agreement, that the ball fields and, you know, the playground area, the pickleball court, none of us seem opposed to any of that.
Correct.
The only item is the hockey rink. So with that,
Well, if we
You
don't
know.
use if we don't have the hockey rink there, how much will that affect? Do you think, would you say with what the public wanted? I mean,
I think the hockey rink can be a to be determined. you
well,
know,
no,
that there would be some level of a hockey rink there, I would guess, some level of ice skating available in town. But to what level? I don't think we know, and that's the biggest price tag. So
and
if
to
there's a,
but if we were to look at what it would be to pour a hockey rink. And then just not insulate it or not refrigerate it, not put a roof over it and stuff and just use the existing basically spot. Just basically re-pour the slabs type of thing. Redo that.
And then we get into a domino effect of then the playground has to shift and potential, or like
Well-
I shouldn't say shift, but it'd have a different footprint because
oh, for sure.
the footprint of the proposed
if we-
expansion goes where the warming house currently is.
But what if we did the warming house and just our hockey rink didn't do the extent of it? You know, the only reason I'm saying that is.
it's
we
still in the
don't
wrong
know-
location though.
But we don't know what's gonna happen. We don't even know there will be anything down there. There could be. There
But-
could not be, but
What I'm saying,
In
the
the
domino
meantime-
effect of it, if we don't know what's taking that space, I don't know where to put
Right.
the
I follow you.
playground
Right.
in the pickleball
So-
court. Should we
so-
get those funds right now?
Right.
A suggestion would be, would it be worthwhile? How easy is it for them to tweak this 3D rendering? Have the footprint of the existing rink and warming house be where it is currently. North, south, and be able to have us see that, and then we can reconvene and look at this, because then, and then also have as fresh of a guesstimate that we can of what the cost would be. Maybe that'll provide us a better insight, because then I can't imagine it's gonna be that overly complicated if down the road we decide to, okay, let's throw on a roof on this thing. Those are supporting beam structures on the exterior of the rink, and the separation between the current rink to where the ballpark is, if that's currently wide enough where it'd be able to accommodate it. Penny pinching sucks. Trust me, I'm not for it, but I just,
So what I'm hearing is you want me to go back to HKGI, have them Do you want them?
What do you guys think about?
No, I don't think that's worth spending the money on right now at this point.
Is
We
it
know where the
possible?
hockey rink is. We don't need, we can walk over there and look at it. We
Oh,
don't
for sure.
need somebody to redraw it. So I'm opposed to spending more money on drawings. We need to just talk about to what extent and give her some guidelines, give her a dollar amount and say, what can we get for 3 million? What can we get for 1.5 million? What can we get for 4 million? With this, because like Amber's saying, it's the domino effect. This is all designed on the new location. We don't want to start back at ground zero, redraw. We know where the existing hockey rink is. And we just, maybe there's a cheaper option, maybe there's something with the warmer house, maybe instead of 5,000 square feet, maybe it's 2,500 square feet. Maybe, and I think that we could have a discussion and say, okay, we might be comfortable more with X amount of dollars and have them reverse engineer it based upon a dollar value we give them with that location, if that makes sense. I think that'd be a better use of our money. and our time.
For Amber, for tonight, I think we all know that it's a park, like you said, Joe. The pickleball, the baseball and the softball have to happen, are fine. I think we're good with that. Moving forward, how do we do that? How do we move forward with those kinds of things? And then where the hockey rink, if one happens, will determine how the playground and stuff is. Or if the playground needs to happen too, and we go with that, and then we fit a hockey rink in where we can, if we have to, or if we want to, or whatever later.
So in your packet, there's a final page of funding, because we only have a little bit of time left, so I want to get to this,
Yep.
Because it is on here. In the council packet. So under funding sources, Spirits has offered to kickstart the Brainerd Lakes Area Community Fund with a $20,000 startup. We need to have that startup money in order for this account to kind of be publicly viewable, to be a option for people to donate to. So my question is if we have any concerns about that going forward, as well as if you had any concerns about maybe starting on some of the just pickleball or playground information, or do you want to hold off on that till we finalize anything else? Because we have like just the specific renderings kind of for the playground and for pickleball. So I could just take those out of this slide deck and use those specific elements versus the entirety of the park, or just hold off on all of it before starting that kind of chain.
I would say that you show what you have. I mean, it's exciting. It looks nice, but also don't be afraid to show the price tag with it, too, because if we're gonna get people to donate, they want to see what they're donating towards.
Right, and I
So-
think that was the idea originally with the commission, is to show them in the price tag. I'm with Joe. I think if we set a limit, I'm okay with scaling down the hockey rink to 3 million. Let's start getting it out there. The $20,000, I'm okay with that through the Spirits to go into the fund, because then people see there's funds in there. Let's start going. And I think the sooner that we put up there and say, this is what we have and this is what the costs are, the sooner people for donations, we can start getting.
Well, and I don't want to be misleading in these drawings. So if we're gonna significantly scale back the rink, that's not what we want to bring to the community.
Well,
So
what about giving
my
a
only point?
budget range, or have them just remove the roof and show a rink with or without a roof, something like that, option A, option B. And the budget range, we're targeting between, whatever, 7 million and 14 million. Wherever we get, we're looking for the public input. I don't know, and start a campaign that way that, hey, we need to hit at least this dollar amount to get phase 1 done. But if we get up to 10 million, 12 million, get these other things, we get phase 2 or phase 3 and kind of do that multi-phase campaign.
secondary to that, and this is gonna be another night that we're probably gonna have to get in this stuff, but one of the funding recommendation for the rink was hopefully if and when the sales tax come back.
And that's not.
That
gonna
was the
happen.
funding recommendation for the rink component because the cost is so significant.
Right.
We all know there's a moratorium on that currently.
Correct.
So what that looks like on the backside, we don't know yet. But that was one of the recommendations for funding for that.
I don't think you're gonna get anybody from the council arguing with the 20,000 from Spirits to get that initial startup going.
No. Go for it.
Do you have a clear direction or no?
Can I ask a question? Maybe that will help, maybe for answering. Would it make sense to reflect the rink in essentially its current state? I think I heard that, there was sort of the sentiment to say, let's show what it is, the cost to replace, and then a couple of level up options to add the different components, should we want to
Which,
go that direction.
which I did a poor job relaying, I guess. I should have asked. Are they going to charge us to tweak this?
Yes.
Okay,
Probably.
okay, so.
But
we do have
30,000.
out of the 10,
30,000 to twist that rink?
That's, I'm just guesstimating, but yes.
wait, what?
30,
If they were to go through and retweak all the plans like that.
Well, it would just be the footprint of the skating rink.
Oh,
where it current-
yeah.
or the ice rink, hockey rink where it currently is at. Where it shows on Saturday.
They would have to adjust the entire model.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, so I don't know what that will cost, but we do have a little bit more room in our budget. But yeah, they would
Essentially,
have to
that's-
redo the model because they would have to reorient the rink.
Which is what are you making a case that you think that it'd be sufficient for us to have something like that in order to be able to present this as Joe is like phase 1, 2, 3?
I think that would be necessary to convey the story.
Mhm.
Okay.
if the cost is sizable, I mean, we'd bring that back to the council before anything significant would be done. I think that'd be appropriate, but we can discuss with HKGI and get some feedback from them and circle back.
Because they probably still have everything on the software and they can just start moving it and go. So
Correct, yeah.
Anything else?
It's gonna be another night.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Amber.
Thank you,
very much.
Amber.
Okay. We'll make a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll be back at 7. So.